Hey, what's up, everyone? It's John Samuel, and welcome to All Access Live. I'm excited to have Doug McCullough here today, who is the person who launched a disability leadership workforce program that I took part in, and also works over at J&J. And if you saw the post, he is the dairy guy. So welcome, Doug.
Fantastic to be here. Thanks for the invitation, John.
Of course, Doug. It's so funny. You and I met over the summer at the Disability In conference over in Dallas. And I want to give a little context because I was with my business partner, Mike Guinelli. He and I were having a drink and getting ready to go over to the dinner. And here you come and ask if you can sit next to us. And you tell us that you work over at J&J. And I went into my spiel about the unpleasant job interview application process I had over at J&J, and that's how we got connected. And you shared a bit about this leadership program you were putting together.
Yeah, this kernel of an idea.
Right. So can you talk about what this program is? Because I did a terrible job in my intro of what it is, but can you talk about this kernel of an idea that you had and what it became?
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. So I've been, so first of all, very sorry about your negative experience with the Johnson & Johnson interviewing process. We've certainly made strides to improve that, and inclusion is certainly a top priority across all types of diversity at J&J. But this idea, so I've been involved with the Johnson & Johnson Disability Employee Resource Group, and through that, have had the chance to work with a lot of disabled people at Johnson & Johnson. And as with any of these employee resource groups, you end up doing a lot of events and doing a lot of activities. And it struck me that sometimes when we would ask someone to lead one of these events, that they would struggle a bit. And it caught me a bit off guard because these were very talented people. They were very, competent at their jobs, doing very well professionally. But when you ask them to actually lead something, they would struggle a bit sometimes. And it struck me that oftentimes this was just a skill set that they'd never been asked to lead anything before. They'd never been in a leadership position before. And as I started thinking about it, it struck me that, oh, well, this maybe isn't entirely surprising that oftentimes people with disabilities haven't had the opportunity to develop those leadership skills, haven't had those foundational leadership experiences that many others have had, coming up, whether in high school, being, let's say, a student council president or captain of the basketball team, or in college, being a leader in their extracurricular activities or professional clubs. And so often that people with disabilities aren't necessarily viewed as leaders, or don't view themselves as leaders because they've never, that expectation hasn't been there. So it struck me there's a real opportunity or need maybe to have programming specific for people with disabilities related to leadership. And as I started looking around at leadership development programs related to diversity, there's a lot of programs out there, based on gender, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, but disability was oftentimes left out of those types of programs. And so it struck me, started talking to people about, hey, what's your experience been with as a talented person with a disability from a leadership perspective, and just basic things. And I got a lot of strong feedback from people saying, sometimes they would have problems getting mentors because mentors would have low expectations of them. Often, as John, oftentimes in the disability community, we'll talk, the phrases out there, the tyranny of low expectations.
Yes.
that people with disabilities, are just, we don't have the same level of expectations for those. And this can be frustrating for talented people with disabilities. And one example that definitely stood out to me was there's this person that had an MBA from a top business school, and they'd started their career, and there was this great job opportunity that opened up at their company, and they talked to their mentor about it. And the mentor said, well, that's a pretty tough job. I'm not sure, if that would be something that would be a good fit for you. And this person's like, what are you talking about? This is exactly what I'm trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
But this mentor was again sort of having low expectations and wasn't just thinking about of how this person could potentially do this job. So I'll pause there, and we can get in more details of the actual program. But that was really the genesis and some of the basic thinking of like, hey, I think maybe there's a real need here to do something in this area.
No, I totally am on board with you. This resonates so much with me because you're right. I mean, there are so many other programs that are designed for other communities, and even the programs I think that were focused on the disability, it was very entry level and not in those those individuals who are moving up in their careers. So I found it when I heard about it, I was like, this is awesome, and I was so excited that you were the one putting this together. But not only were you doing this by yourself, you actually compiled an amazing team together. And I'd love to kind of talk about how you were able to pull in so many amazing folks to deliver a program. And if you can talk about the program itself, what it entailed.
Yeah, sure. So this first of all, maybe the program, the idea was to just launch a pilot program. And so we looked to have a small group of people this past fall and have 6 different sessions with this, focused on various topics, starting off with why is disability leadership important, and why should you view yourself as a leader, as a person with disability, to then various leadership topics related to inner critic, which is something that is especially maybe relevant. We try to tailor it specific to disability related topics, because obviously there's a lot of programming and resources out there for people to improve their leadership. But our niche is really, what are those specific areas specific to the disability perspective that need to be addressed in leadership? So inner critic, what are your strengths, viewing disability as a strength, things like that. And then as far as pulling people together, so it's one of these things where it just starts off with slow and then starts gaining momentum. There was a senior executive at Johnson & Johnson that I knew that had retired, but was now teaching at Rutgers University on leadership. And I just had bumped into him at an event, and he was talking to me about his teaching and leadership. Like, oh, well, I've got this idea related to disability leadership. And he's like, wow, that sounds really great. I'd love to be involved with that. So that was, that led to, another person person that he knew that worked in coaching and professional coaching. And she was excited to be a part of that. And she actually had a disability herself. So she was excited to participate. And then there was another retired Johnson & Johnson executive that had been involved with some leadership development programming at J&J related to people that had left the workforce for various reasons, predominantly females had left to start a family, and they had a little leadership series for people that had left. They call it returnships, people that have had to leave the workforce for whatever reason, and then come back several years later. And he'd been involved with that. And I saw in his retirement announcement that he was looking to do some coaching and teaching. And I reached out to him, and it turned out that he had a visual impairment that I didn't even know about since I'd last worked with him. So he's excited to come on board. So those were sort of some initial cornerstones of people that were related to this, that had direct experience, and very talented people. But again, I want to emphasize that this was not specifically a Johnson & Johnson program. And so there were some other people in my network, a person that I specifically have a progressive form of muscular dystrophy, specifically spinal muscular atrophy. And I'd met this tremendous leader through the Muscular Dystrophy Association that had moved on from that organization to work on leadership and programs in the corporate world. And so she was excited to come on board. And then another, contact had mentioned, when I talked to them about this, said, well, there's this person that works in military leadership development programs that literally wrote a book on disability leadership. And so, and I reached out to him, and, inevitably, these folks were all very excited about this. Another contact through my spinal muscular atrophy connections that has a coaching business specific for people with disabilities. So, just
it's like a snowball, right?
Exactly. It really is snowballed, and just these really and we pulled them together, and it was even a more talented. I knew they were all talented, but as you get to know them more, like, wow, they're even more talented than I realized, and it was great. Their passion for this and to take it forward. So yeah, it's definitely not just not me. There's and as you start tapping into, as I'm sure you've experienced, John, this whole disability, there's a lot of talent in this community that oftentimes we overlook. But as you start reaching out or having some conversations about this and getting connected, as you said, it snowballs, and there's some amazing talent that to tap into in this space.
No, you're so right. And I think, I mean, that was one of the coolest things was I think the diverse talent of individuals who were doing coaching and doing, having this kind of leadership experience, and how you were able to bring them together. You were able to bring these individuals who are working in all these different silos. And I think that's something that we need a lot more of, is connecting the dots, bringing these people together, and then helping the next generation, right? Because the individuals that you mentioned that you brought together, they had been doing this they were all very experienced and successful individuals, but their journeys were difficult and challenging, and they had to overcome a lot of stigmas and barriers to get to where they were, and to be able to pass on that knowledge. I think you and I mean, that's some of our goals, right? Is to pass on how can we help the next generation of individuals. And so, I think that was one of the coolest things that you were able to do, is bring together this super talented group of people. And I love the topics that you did choose, like the inner critic. It's something that I've dealt with, right? Like, it's something I deal with on a daily basis. And, I thought that was one of the things, is like you catered the topics of the course really around things that were focused on individuals with disability, what they face, but then everyone faces, right? It's
absolutely. I think I mean, certainly some of the initial feedback we've gotten from that I'd received from just talking with different individuals is and just this whole leadership idea of this of leadership related disability is we have sort of a stereotype of what leadership means. It's there's a certain picture of what that looks like, and disability often doesn't necessarily fit into that picture, because so often there's misconceptions about disability, or disability is viewed as less than, and when we talk about leadership, and I think a key thing is a lot of people would say, well, I have a lot of experience advocating for myself or managing a team of personal care assistants, so I have a lot of leadership experience, and that's all true. But I think ultimately, to be there's an opportunity to be a leader of non-disabled people, and how do you lead a group of an able-bodied team when you're a person with a disability, and how do you when you talk about executive presence or just having that competence or that skill set to lead not just people in the disabled community or advocate for yourself, but really I work in corporate in the corporate world, but how do you lead the non-disabled people? And again, we're not just happy being leading disabled groups, but we have high aspirations, and want to be leaders in our own right, regardless of disability or not disability. So I think that idea of your and you have a lot. We certainly talked a lot about you have a lot to offer. The perspectives, the skill set that you've built up as a person with disability, and the need. Certainly, diversity, equity, inclusion continues to have tremendous growth and activity and excitement at these last few years. And I think make sure that disability is a key part of those discussions. And that there's a real, I think I've probably worked in this space for close to 10 years now, and I think it's really been exciting how over that time the companies initially were looking at it, disability inclusion is a nice thing to do, that's a right thing to do, but it would always get put on the back burner behind other diversity programs, because they would see the business case for those, whereas disability inclusion was, again, viewed more as a nice to have, but that paradigm has really changed these last few years, where companies are realizing that the same business case that applies to other types of diverse communities absolutely applies to the disability community as well. And they're now viewing it as this business imperative, and whether or not that's developing products for the disabled community, whether or not that's tapping into this tremendous pool of talent of the 1.5 billion disabled people around the world, and saying, hey, we need to have more of those people working in our organizations so we can understand their perspectives and tap into their strengths. And like I said, it's really been and so companies are now actively recruiting for people in the disability community. And so we're so on the one hand, the demand is increasing, but we also need to make sure that we have the supply there as well of these strong disabled leaders that can move into these positions and do great work and lead. So I think that's really been exciting of a time to like I said, as there's been an increase in need for demand, that we certainly meet that challenge and provide people that can step up and fill those roles.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, even with my own organization at Abler, well, I mean, I talk about how with our digital accessibility services and our, disability inclusion training, we're building up the demand, right? And then through our workforce development program, we're training up to fill that supply. And you're right. I mean, it's that you need that demand and supply. And right now companies are seeing the ROI, and that is driving that demand. So the programs like this, which you just did, is amazing. And, because I found like some of the benefits I gained from this really came from my interactions and engagement with my coach, Marilyn. Like, she really was a great resource to me throughout the program. And especially because the program it took place in September and October of last year. Is that correct?
September through November. So basically 3 months.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, that was a very difficult time for me, because towards the end of the year, October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And I think there was a 45-day span. I did 31 speaking and talking engagements.
Gosh.
Right. It was like, I was just drained. And then I had the book coming out, and it was just a really hard time for me, and from a mental health perspective. And for me, when we talk about leadership, mental health is a big piece of that. Self-care. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was worn down. I was tired. And, and having a coach like Marilyn to talk me through that and kind of, help me realize that, it's like going back to the whole mentality of the airplane. You got to put your oxygen mask on before you can help others. And it was kind of like I needed to really take care of myself before I could help others, and have a coach to kind of, help me realize that was really important. So I really appreciate you including coaching. And, what are your plans for this program moving forward?
Yeah, so no, absolutely. Thanks for I didn't do a good enough job providing that background, John. But the program structure itself, so we would have biweekly sessions. Every other Monday for these couple months, we would have a 90-minute session where we would provide specific content, and then in the off week, we would have the participants meet with their coach. So as we talked earlier, we had these tremendous group of talented coaches, and really that was I think a key part of the program, as you just outlined, that providing that content isn't it's one thing to talk about it as a group, but really do the individual work and meet with your individual coaches and these certified coaches that are really experts in working and helping coach people and have that skill set and that training to really make that effective. And so I think that was and with feedback surveys we collected afterwards, that was definitely something that everybody viewed as just this tremendous positive, and maybe set this apart from some of the other programs maybe they've participated in the past, is having that both the content and that coaching. That one-on-one coaching to really help people dive deeper and for their personal situations, as one person called it, the secret sauce of the program was those coaches, and as you said, just very skilled and experienced people. For your question about where this is going forward, so the plan, a couple of plans one is that, we're having some discussions on, what exactly does this program look like when it matures? What is, the end state for this, and how big, can we grow it? But in the meantime, we're absolutely looking to do another session starting in the near future with this, and we're also working to talk to some different organizations about potentially sponsoring it, because for this to be sustainable, we need to have a financial support for this. That the coaches, were tremendously generous with their time and whatnot, but to grow this and really make it sustainable, we need to have a funding model for this. So what does that look like? So yeah, certainly, if anybody's listening, that two things. So one, if you're interested in participating in this, we're starting, slowly starting to get the word out about the next pilot, the next iteration of this program. And then also, if anyone has any connections with organizations that would potentially be interested in being a financial sponsor for this, and being involved in that way, those would be two things that would welcome any listener to reach out to John or myself and help us with that. Because so I think the more we talk about this, you talk about that snowball effect, John, is that as I said initially, it seemed like this might be a good idea, but we're not sure yet. But as we've had more conversations and talked to more people, and the reach of this has increased, it's just really reinforced to me just how much this is needed, and what the opportunity, and what a big opportunity there is to do something in this space. So we're really excited about continuing to grow this and take it to the next level, and as well as even and there's been strong interest in the folks that were involved with this first pilot, and staying connected and continuing to learn from each other as they face as they progress in their careers and in their goals and what they're doing, and continuing to provide this group of peers. That was another thing that came out that several people have mentioned, is that a lot of these participants had they didn't necessarily know other successful disabled people, and they really valued that those connections with other folks in the group, and learning from them, and having a chance of true peers that they could connect with and learn from and talk with.
Yeah, no, it's cool to have an alumni group of individuals who've gone through the program, and that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on this show, is to share this program, because we do want to continue that snowball to grow. We want to get the word out there. We need to raise awareness for programs like what you're doing, because it's great. This is how we're going to have real change. This is how we're going to, grow the next generation of leaders with disabilities. So, Doug, I appreciate you coming on. And, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way, so I'm certainly on LinkedIn. You just look up my name, Doug McCullough, on LinkedIn. I'm the one with Johnson & Johnson. The other, certainly my email, you can feel free to email me directly. It's very simple. It's just my name, Doug McCullough 94 at hotmail.com. So would welcome people that want to reach out to me that way. And those would be maybe the two easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Doug. I appreciate everything you've done, in terms of putting together this program, and also, including me. And I'm so thankful for that, and also for joining us today. So thank you, Doug. And thank you, Annie, for everything you do. And thanks for everyone for taking part and watching.
Thanks so much, John.
Thanks.